Hello, friends. I'm Anderson Marchak,
And I'm Ricardo Segura.
and we are the Panel Bros. Welcome to the panel.
Welcome to the panel.
Okay, so we're here with a movie breakdown,
Oh, yeah.
and we're timing this as of this recording. It's towards the end of April, and we're going to release this episode to coincide with opening weekend of Evil Dead Rise.
I
And
cannot wait.
so if you're watching this when it first drops, Evil Dead Rise is coming out. But to kind of get you prepared for that, we are doing a breakdown of, as it's known online, Evil Dead 2013.
It's crazy that it like I don't know why I feel so recent, but that movie came out years ago.
Yeah, as of this recording, 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
Right. So some things happened in between. As you know, you watched the Evil Dead show. Ash
Yup.
versus Evil Dead. So that was another Evil Dead
So good.
project that happened. I think we had like an Evil Dead video game, but no major movie until now. And I said let's do a breakdown for Evil Dead 2013. So
I was hyped. I was hyped because I love
yeah,
this movie.
I know this is a horror movie you enjoy, and this is a horror movie I enjoy too, but for different
Yeah.
reasons. So
Yeah.
let's pull things up here.
This is one of those times where someone will make a remake and it goes, "Why would you do that?" And then you watch it and you go, "That was excellent. That was great."
Absolutely. So Evil Dead 2013 was directed by Fede Alvarez,
Oh yeah.
and it was released on April 5th of 2013. And do you have anything to add before we get started, Ricardo?
I saw this in theaters twice.
Okay.
I saw this in theaters twice. I saw it, and then a buddy of mine, a mutual friend that we have, he was like, "I really want to see it. I don't have anyone to go with." I was like, "When are you free? We will
Right.
go together." And I got to watch it again, and it was great because as I'm watching everything happen on the screen, I would peek over to him to see if he was watching and enjoying it. So it was a good time. It was a good time.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So we start off with a young girl running through the woods here. And excuse me one second here. And she's being pursued by some people here, and we don't know why they're pursuing her. We just know that they're chasing her here, and once they catch her, you see her wake up in the cabin here. We have this lady chanting some things. It's really odd. It's really
Oh, it's
uncomfortable.
creepy, really creepy.
Right. And we have this young girl, and she's pleading with her father, and you're just like, what's happening here? Why would they do this to this young girl? And she's like, please let me go. And her father's just like, no, I can't do that. And how's mom doing? It's like, you killed mom, honey.
Yeah, I was sitting there because, like you, in the beginning when they have her, like she's doing such a good job of being, portraying being scared that I thought that they were the bad guys. I was like,
Right.
why are they? I was like, oh, are they going to sacrifice her? And this is what's happening? No.
Yeah, absolutely. So the girl's pleading, and she's just like, so spoiler alert, we're not really going to do too many lines from this movie because it'll get us banned.
Oh,
We will get flagged. There's
immediately.
too much profanity, too much vulgarity. So we're not really going to do too many lines from this movie. We're just going to allude to them. But, she's pleading, Daddy, please let me go. Daddy, please let me go. Daddy, I'll rip your soul out.
Bro.
I'll rip your soul out, Daddy.
When and she's still like in regular human form. She's like, I will rip your soul out. And the moment she said that, I was like, oh, wait a minute.
Right.
No, oh, she's bad.
Oh
She's
no.
bad.
Oh no. Right. And then they in order to release her from the whatever's possessing her, he lights her on fire, and unfortunately that releases her, and we get our title card, Evil Dead.
Bro, you know how rough that would be as a father to like the father explains to her that she killed his wife, her own mother. And
Right.
now, in order to release her soul from being tormented for all eternity, he's got to set her on fire
Right.
and kill her. And he's got to watch that visual. And I was like, bruh, that's kind of heavy. And then, like you said, as soon as that happens, you get that giant Evil Dead
Right.
opening card, and it's just like, "Da-da!" Like very loud and
Yeah.
aggressive. And I was like, oh, we're in. We are strapped in.
Yeah, exactly. And to your point, like this in itself could have been a story.
Yeah.
Like we don't know what happened leading up to this because obviously,
Nope.
it's not like it just happened overnight. I mean, it could have happened overnight, but we don't know what led up to this. But obviously, we needed a reason for the the events to transpire for what's
Yep.
going to happen soon. So
Easily one of my favorite cold opens in a horror movie.
yeah,
It's one of my absolute favorites because, again, from the beginning, I thought, like I said, I was like, oh, who are these creepy people? Because they purposely made those people that were
right,
chanting look creepy. Like they did it on
right.
purpose.
There was
And you're
some
kind of like,
there was like some physical
yeah.
deformity there. The
And like
the old
they
older lady, yeah, yeah,
just to make you feel uneasy about them, and you
right,
have this young girl that's like, why are you doing this to me? And you're like, again, I was like, are they sacrificing her? Is that what's going to happen? Is that what's going to cause everything? And you're like, oh no, this evil already exists,
right.
and it has her already. And it's like, oh man. But again, I love aggressive title cards too. So as soon as it hits you, it kind of made me feel like this is the movie. Like we're gonna be in your face,
Right.
we're gonna be aggressive and hard. Get ready. And I was like, all right.
Yeah, absolutely. So 3 years have passed, and we have David coming to the cabin with his girlfriend Natalie and their dog named Grandpa,
Hmm.
and they they meet up with people that are already there. We have his friend Eric, who is a high school teacher. We have Olivia, who is a nurse, and then we have his younger sister Mia.
Yep.
And apparently, they haven't seen each other or spoken in some time, and um, there's a reason for that because she's unfortunately fallen into a drug situation.
Yeah.
She's an addict, and it's heroin. Isn't really specified, but they kind of just put it out there, and so time passes, and then obviously that's when she starts having the withdrawal that night, and she starts complaining about certain things. She's smelling certain things, and people are kind of ignoring it because, oh, well, the nurse is like, well, she's going through withdrawal.
Yeah.
She's going
Yeah.
through withdrawal. There's nothing out of the ordinary, and at this point, um, I just like to add there was a lot of tension in the air
Yeah.
already because all the friends just look like they're done with this. Like,
Yeah.
we're here. We're not here for her. We're here for you, David.
Hmm.
It's the girlfriend. There's the nerd. Like they're all David's friends. And obviously they know the family, so that's why they're here too. But it's almost just like, well, if she's gonna get better, this is the last chance.
Yeah. I appreciated it too because like they're giving us a lot of family drama, internal drama,
Right.
and you have an emotional connection now. And I think when this movie first came out, we talked about it, how great a plot point it was that they were there to help her fight her addiction.
Right.
And in that situation, like you mentioned, she's hearing things, she's smelling things. So as Olivia had mentioned, she's like, hey, she's going to go through this withdrawal symptoms. She's going to say things, she may do things, et cetera, et cetera. So then from a viewer's perspective, I understand why they would probably not believe things when she says them or if she acts out. So it's a really good plot point. And I appreciate the fact that they were like, hey, listen, she's an addict. And like you said, her friends are kind of like, this is our last resort. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, if we don't stop this, she will die and we will
Right.
not be able to bring her back. So,
Right.
like, I like that aspect. And I thought it was really cool that they're like, hey, they're all in this cabin and they're like, we're not leaving until we make sure that she gets this out of her system. And I thought that
Right.
was really cool.
Yeah, and in a way, I said that they were frustrated, but in a way, if deep down, if they didn't care about her, they wouldn't be there.
Oh, of course.
They're all frustrated by it. Obviously, this has torn the
Yeah.
family apart, torn the
Yep.
friendships apart, and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, they're there for her.
Yep.
Um, David discovers the cellar, and the cellar has a lot of not nice things in there. There's
Yeah.
animal corpses. We see a shotgun, and then we see a book. My Latin isn't good. Naturom Demonto.
Why
And
would you say it? Why would you say it? Where would you say it?
yeah. And right in the middle of all that nasty imagery, we cut to
Mhm.
the kitchen and someone's using an electric knife cutting a
Bro,
steak.
bro, and it's
And Natalie's the one using it. Yeah.
I don't want to say it. We'll get to that point in the
Right.
movie, but they did that on purpose. They were like,
Yeah.
"Hey, who? You know what? Let's have Natalie cut into this meat with this electric knife. Why?
Right.
We'll talk about it later." And I was like,
And
"Okay."
I think there might have been a couple giggles in the audience when I,
Oh,
because it's almost
people
just
knew.
like, yeah, it's just like, well, we don't
People
know what's
knew.
going to happen, but you zoomed in on that electric knife cutting a piece of meat. And, that may have been for a reason.
Yeah.
We start showing Eric, who's supposed to be smart because he's a teacher, so to
Good
speak.
lord.
We're gonna dunk on Eric this whole episode.
It's gonna get it.
So Eric finds the book, which is actually wrapped. It's not even opened yet. He
Mm-mm.
unwraps it, and he sees like this
Bro,
disgusting imagery.
what was wrapped around it? Do you remember what's wrapped around
Was
the
it
book?
barbed wire?
Barbed
So
wire,
trying
my
to keep
boy.
people out of it, basically. Do not open this. Right. I mean, if the dead animals and the nasty smell coming from the basement and the shotgun and the ominous language and this, that's going on here doesn't drive you away, maybe when you unwrap it and saw the barbed wire, maybe I shouldn't do this,
That should have been the biggest red flag on the up to that point, 'cause they even say when they go down there to the cell and they see all the animals, one of them even speculates, and I think it's Eric. I think he's kinda like, "Oh, maybe was this used for sacrifices? Like, what is this?" Like,
Right.
it's a very quick throwaway line because they just see a bunch of animals strung up and you get a book. But like you said, man, like he's opening this, and I remember just being like, "You are the biggest idiot."
Right.
I was like, "Listen, it is wrapped in barbed wire. If a book is wrapped in anything wrapped in barbed wire, don't open it, my boy.
Right.
Don't open it."
I'm not even touching it. I don't want to get hurt touching the
No,
barbed wire, let
no,
alone
no.
trying to unwrap it.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to get like 13 shots now because I got cut
Yeah,
with this barbed wire.
tetanus,
Like, leave it alone.
exactly.
Leave it alone.
So he reads an incantation from the book,
Mhm.
and this supposedly awakens something, a force, a spirit.
Oh yeah.
Mia starts having visions of a a doppelganger, a version of
Yeah.
herself that looks possessed, so to speak. And she starts asking everybody to leave, and they're just like, once again, Olivia,
Yep.
the nurse. She's not a doctor, but she's a nurse. Like, I've seen this before. She's either having withdrawal or she's trying to back out of this because she doesn't want to go through with it. So everyone's brushing Mia off. So they refuse. They think she's just like, she's backing out. She sneaks out. She steals Eric's car and she's racing away, and while in the car, like, what am I doing? What am I doing? But
Yeah.
it's just kind of like, no, I don't feel good. And while driving, she sees the doppelganger. And it's not whenever she sees the doppelganger, it's not clear if it's really there or if she's seeing things,
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but in any case, she swerves and she crashes the car. Then obviously she's getting chased, and then we have a scene with some vines, and
Very. Which is a callback to the original Evil Dead that
correct,
was it is a very controversial scene even to this day. I was not sure they were gonna incorporate it into the
right,
movie, and he did it. Fede Alvarez was like,
right,
"Listen, I'm gonna go, we're gonna go pretty hard." And it's a really, really uncomfortable scene for obvious reasons. Um, Obviously for her to be in such a vulnerable state with
right,
such evil in her presence, and that it's just like, oh god,
right.
it's really uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I don't remember. I think it was 81, if I'm not mistaken. The Evil Dead, the Sam Raimi
Mhm.
movie. Um, so for that time, for something so controversial to come out, and then for it to get redone in 2013, even more horrific.
Yeah.
It says a lot about Fede Alvarez. Is just like, well, I'm doing a quote unquote remake or reimagining of this movie. He never really called it a remake, but
No.
a reimagining of the movie. And so she's already scared because the vines are grabbing her. The demon regurgitates a vine, and it enters her body. And in a way, from this moment forward, Mia is different. It's almost like, I don't want to put it out there, but maybe like the spirits impregnated her. Maybe that's why it was just such a disgusting manner. What are your thoughts on that with the
It's
vines?
it's very interesting because again, it was I I'm so used to, especially in the original film, usually they use the camera work to show possession, right? Like you have that camera work and it's chasing through the woods, and it
Right,
usually just the camera would literally hit the actor and it's like, oh, they're possessed. But in this situation, like the original, it was like, no, there was a physical representation of this evil entity entering an individual.
right,
And it was like, and I don't know exactly what he was going for, where it was almost like a Jason Goes to Hell bit, where it's like, hey, the evil's in there to be born and whatnot, which was really weird at the time. But for this one, I was like, I don't know, I don't even know how to verbal, I don't know how to put it into
right,
words, because I do feel that like I tend to believe when she sees that evil doppelganger Mia, that there is an evil presence there. I'm
right,
like, she's 100% seeing something, obviously, and I think that it was at that. I think that's just to show the unity. I
right,
feel like that was their way of showing their unity. It's like, hey,
right,
like it's almost as if Mia, the evil doppelganger, is in this branch and is in. Yeah,
right,
it's really
right.
complicated.
And in a way, anytime we see they call it the abomination,
Mhm.
manifest, it violates the people in some way, shape, or form.
Oh yeah,
Like with
oh
your
yeah,
mind or
yep,
physically or whatever. So it was almost like we didn't need to see it, but the spirit entered her in the most disgusting way
yep,
possible to kind of just set the tone of like,
yeah,
this thing isn't playing around. So
yeah, yeah,
definitely tough to watch. Absolutely. I've made a note here. The very next scene, we see Mia in the corner, and she's still trying to comprehend everything that happened to her. She doesn't even she's think, did it happen? Did it not happen? Am I seeing things? Am I not
mhm,
seeing things? And I like the shot that Alvarez did. All you can see is her eyes,
yeah.
and she's in the dark, and it's very disturbing. But she's just saying, "You have to get me out of here,"
Yeah,
and
it's
there's such fear in her eyes.
there's a really good scene with her and her brother in that scene where she like
Right,
it's one of my favorite acting scenes in the movie, and like you said, it's just her eyes, and then she's kinda in the shadows, she tells him, she's like, there was something in the woods, and I think it's inside me now." And
right,
he's just like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like she put it into words in the best way that she could, but how would you even explain that? It's heavy.
exactly. So David goes outside and he finds Grandpa the dog beaten to death, unfortunately.
Yeah,
And for whatever reason, he gets a vision of Mia killing the dog with a hammer for
yeah,
whatever reason. His mind went straight there, straight to that vision, so to speak.
yeah,
Um, he's asking everybody, "Where's Mia?" They're like, "Oh, she's in the shower," and he finds that she's fully clothed, but she had turned the dial all the way up on the heat, and
yup.
it's literally burning the skin off of her face and her body.
Yeah, she had, like, massive burns, like, the 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 mix of practical effects with CGI, and they used to see, like, her cheek becoming exposed,
Yeah,
and you're just seeing it, and you're like, "She's literally boiling alive." And then they cut to an image in the book, and you see that in the book, that's one of the transformation phases, and I remember just being like, "You" like, I was watching this in the theater, I was like, "You gotta get her out of there now."
right. And I like that they did that. That anytime you saw something happen in real life, they would get a flash of the book
Yep,
because you're getting that everything is coming to pass as it did in the book for the evil to come forward, so to speak.
yep,
Um, so they excuse me one second here. So they tried to take her to the hospital because, she's in shock now, and
yeah.
unfortunately, some rain comes and they're not able to go. So they're
Bro, that
thinking
place that
Yeah.
bridge just like flooded, my
Yeah.
dude. Like
He's like, "You ain't getting
and
out of here."
again, it's a subtle change because in the original Evil Dead, like the bridge is like folded up. Like it's just like, oh my god. But they're still playing with these characters where it like the brother is like, is this supernatural? Is this not? Because he just sees like a massive flood. It's just completely wiped away the road. So like him seeing that could almost be like, okay, that I guess that could happen. But the scariest thing is that when he turns around and he sees her in the car and she kind of like you slowly see the smile creep in.
Right.
And it was like, oh, that's not good, my boy.
Right. Right. So that night, while everybody's in the room, they're talking, this, that, the other, Mia walks in with the shotgun. And she's there, yeah, it's like, "All right, Mia, you're not yourself right now. Please put the gun down," and she raises it up, it's just like, is she gonna shoot her own brother? She says that um she shoots him and she clips his arm,
Mhm.
so she doesn't get him. But she does say that everyone's going to die tonight. And then she what word am I gonna use here? She regurgitates
Oh,
on
yeah.
on, um on Olivia.
Olivia.
Olivia, that's because Olivia's trying to creep over and grab the gun because Mia had passed out. So
Yeah.
she's trying to grab the gun, and then all of a sudden Mia grabs her, and then, all over Olivia's face, it looks like blood, bile, whatever the case may be.
It was like SpaghettiOs. It was just like
Yeah,
really
it
it
was
was
like
so
it
gross,
was
man.
buckets, it was
It
wild,
was it was
and
gross.
I'm just like, "Ew." So, yeah, just nasty. So they managed to lock her in the basement because obviously she's not herself right now, and they all think
Mhm.
that she's having an episode because of the withdrawal. They don't know
Yeah.
what's happening yet. Um, Due to this incident with Olivia, the nurse, apparently Olivia gets possessed now because of this incident, and Eric walks into the bathroom, and we see Olivia. She had broken the mirror, and now she's cutting her own face and mutilating it. You
It's
could
disgusting.
you could see like a Glasgow smile right across here, and
Yeah.
all you could see is like her teeth and you
Ugh.
know the muscles and
It's
everything.
so gross because from outside the bathroom door, Eric can hear
Right,
like the cutting of flesh. And when he goes in and he sees her hunched in the corner, she turns and she just has like the glass and she's got like this permanent
right.
Joker smile. It's horrific.
I would like to know if this was a practical effect or not because it looked really decent. I know he
Yeah.
said that he did mostly practical effects for this movie, and that was the draw for for
Yes.
for Evil Dead 2013, So
Yes.
I'd like to know if that was a prosthetic because it looked really good. Um,
I'm gonna see if I can find anything on that.
I know that he said it was CGI to make certain things look nicer, but for the most
Mhm.
part, a lot of it was practical.
Yeah, and you can and I appreciated that too because I think that was one of the people that I think that was one of the things that many fans had talked about online was something that was so special about the originals was how much practical effects went into it. So I know especially in horror that a lot of CGI started taking over in visual effects and whatnot in
Right.
certain areas, and people were just really hungry for practical effects. And I was very happy to know that they put it out there, like, "Hey, we're going to use CGI when we have to, but there's going to be a lot of practical effects," and it showed, and I appreciated that.
Absolutely. So he's mortified upon seeing this, so he's trying to stop her, from hurting herself, and then, we get a flash of Olivia doing this to her face, and then the book where the person's doing it to themselves. So yeah, that's some
Yeah.
more imagery there. Um, Unfortunately, she hurts him, and then she stabs him in the face with the needle, and then repeatedly in the face and the body. We get that disgusting image of him pulling the needle out of his orbital. It was
Son.
we didn't know if it actually went into the eyeball, but apparently it was into the face. So
Yeah,
it was
and
pretty
it's
nasty.
it's a syringe, and she's going to town,
It's just
man. Like
stabbing him.
I
Yeah,
I didn't even count it, but it's you're doing it at least 15 to 20 times just
yeah.
because it's very quick. It's like
And
pop, 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 pop.
there's a connotation to needles. There's a lot of people that needles
Yes.
frighten them, and it's almost like This is more frightening than somebody getting stabbed with a knife because there's a
Yeah.
connotation with a hypodermic needle, you know?
And they made it a point. She stabs him right in the upper pec with a piece of glass with a of the mirror. She
Right,
stabs him, right? So we're kind of like, oh, ow, right?
right,
But it was the needle that
right,
shook people because
right.
again, people have that common fear. And the first couple stabs, you see her get the glasses, you see the glasses shatter and everything else. And then, like you said, when he slowly pulls that out, man, that's one of those moments where I kind of did like one of these. Like I kind of
Yeah.
like looked away from the screen a little bit, like, ah, it got me.
So, unfortunately, to stop her, he hits her, um, I think with pieces of the sink, if I'm not mistaken,
Yep.
in the
Bash. Yup.
back of her head until he kills her,
Yup.
and everybody sees that, and he's just like, "I had to," "She was attacking me," and he's starting to get an idea of things, but he's not ready
Yes.
to say it yet.
He's the first one of the group that's starting to be like, okay, wait a minute, this happened, okay, because like Mia, like you mentioned, everyone's kind of like, okay, Mia's like, we've never seen someone go this extreme, but they're still in that realm of like, is this just Mia? The moment that this happens with Olivia, it's like, wait, something's wrong, like
Right,
that doesn't happen. And now Eric is kind of like, guys, I think it's something else.
right. We shift over here to Mia talking to Natalie because she's peeking out from the cellar door. And
Yo.
we see that a lot. And she's saying weird things, obviously, and being very disturbing. And but she manages to lure Natalie into the cellar with her and pretending basically like, I'm
Hmm.
so sorry, it's not the abomination speaking, it's Mia, or so we
Yeah.
thought. And
Yeah.
you know, and she bites Natalie's hand
Yeah, she
because
does.
Natalie has the knife to protect herself, and then she bites her hand, and then Mia grabs the knife and proceeds to split her own tongue down the middle,
Bro, that scene,
and they show it. They zoom in on it.
that she does such a good job, man, because like she's got her eyes rolling back and and it's a practical effect. So they got a
Right.
fake tongue and it's practical. So again, that practicality, you can feel it. Like it makes you squeamish. And that scene specifically, I have many friends who said that's the part that got them the most. They're
Yeah.
like, dude, I'm fine with everything else. The tongue split was
Right.
bad.
Right. And then now, if you're not grossed out enough, now this person that split their tongue is going to forcibly kiss the other
Yep.
person while the blood is gushing out of their mouth.
It was
Disgusting.
again, I'm cheering for it in the movie, but at the
Right.
same time, I'm like, this is disgusting. Like
Right.
it's
Because
just, oh my
Right,
god.
because it's almost like after you see something, now you have to see something even worse. Like, that's the
Yes,
theme here. Like, all right, so we saw the vines. She was running from the doppelganger. The vines got her, and she's like, "Oh no, what's gonna happen?" And then we see the demon enters her. All right, that was
something
awful.
worse. Yeah, it
And
was,
then we had Olivia cutting her face off, awful, but then now, a few months later, she's stabbing him with a hypodermic needle, and we see the needle coming out of his face.
bro.
So it's almost like he did like this double header each time. It's like, I'm not just gonna get you with this one thing. We're gonna get you with two things at once each time. That's what I saw.
Yeah, like it's one of those things where he hit you with something and you would feel like, okay, that's probably the worst thing that could happen in this moment.
Right.
And then he goes above it. You know what I mean? Again, the tongue splitting thing could have just been the end because she bites
Right.
from the hand.
We were
That
done.
if they wanted to, Natalie could have kicked her and fallen on the steps and walked out the cellar, and everybody would have been like, "Oh, how intense was that scene?" But
Right.
he says, "Let's go above it," and then like regurgitates in her mouth with
Right.
blood and the split tongue, and it's like, good grief.
Right, exactly. And then because she bit her, it's almost like, oh well, the spirit entered her now because she bit her.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Zombie rules.
yeah.
No,
You
no,
know what
no,
I mean?
no.
Yeah.
We're gonna go. Alvarez is just like, no, we're gonna really gross everybody out now.
Yep.
So David helps Natalie get out of there, locks Mia back up again, and it's just like, guys, we need to stay away from Mia. Um, and then, as I nicknamed him between our conversations, Eric the idiot
Eric
finally
the
just
idiot.
finally decides to explain what's going on here,
Yep.
and he tells them about Mia being purified, and there's a few different ways to to rid herself of the abomination. It's either by live burial,
Mhm.
dismemberment, or burning.
Yeah.
We shift a little bit here, and Natalie is in the kitchen.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And so now we have a situation where Mia's not even in the room,
Mm-mm.
but she's pulling the strings as the abomination from down there. And
Yep.
we always switch back and forth when we see some weird things happening. Um, in an homage to the original The Evil Dead, the hand that got bit starts having a mind of its own.
Mhm.
And Natalie sees that it's spreading.
Yeah.
So, in an effort to possibly save herself, she looks at the electric knife, and
Oh, it's so
and
good.
possessed me is like, "Don't do it.
Don't cut it. She's like, "Don't cut it. Don't cut it."
Yeah,
Like, I'm like,
don't cut it off.
"Don't cut
Don't
it."
do." She's telling her not to do it,
Yeah,
and
yep.
she's just like, "Bro, she went hard. She just
Dude,
like
they don't even cut. Like, they don't cut away. They just show this thing, and it's a practical
right.
effect arm, and she's just going in. And I remember being like, "Oh man, they're not cutting away. Oh
No,
no." And I would love to know how much blood they use on this movie because they just start spraying
right.
just nonstop. And like Mia's down there like, "No, no, no." Like she's getting angry. She's like, "No, don't cut it. Don't cut it." And she's like, F you, and then go ahead and done it. And then you hear it when she cuts through the bone.
That's
You
and
hear
right,
That's when you hear that nasty sound, and then
right.
she lets out this horrible
She
scream.
doesn't scream until then, though, so Natalie's a trooper,
Yeah,
I
man.
it's going in, and not until it hit the bone, that's when she finally let out the scream.
Yep.
Disgusting scene. Eric barges in to see the mess that's going
Oh,
on, and we get a shot of Natalie's arm hanging by a
ah,
thread.
I like a tenant. Just
By a thread. It drops, and,
I feel better now.
I feel much better now.
She goes, "I feel much better
I
now."
feel much better now.
See, like, and again, Alvarez did this on purpose, right? Because she's up against the refrigerator, so we can't see that arm. So they could have very easily had her turn around and it's just gone. And because that's a shock in itself. Like,
Nope.
arm, it was like, no, no, we want you to see it hanging by a tendon. So that way she goes, "It's all right." And it just
Yep,
and it just
and
falls off. And
you
it's like,
hear it
ah,
you hear it hit the kitchen floor,
yep. And it's
Um,
just, oh
there
God.
was a gasp in the theater when that happened, in my
Dude,
theater, I
yes.
remember.
Yes. I remember like they had to be younger people because obviously like these movies caters to teens as well. And like they were just doing like the big screams like just
Right.
screaming. And I was like, oh my God, it was brutal.
We fast forward to Eric and David arguing in the living room,
Mhm.
and now Natalie's possessed,
Oh boy.
but she comes in with a nail gun,
Yeah.
and she's shooting at them, and she gets Eric the idiot with a bunch of nails in his face, and
Forearms,
yeah,
chest,
she gets him,
hand.
No, actually, no, she didn't get his face, but she got almost everywhere,
Bad. He
and,
got it bad.
and to, kinda like it kind of all happened at the same time, you know, David sh y y there was a struggle, and then Eric got the gun, and then he starts shooting her,
Mhm.
and, I think, she comes with a weapon or something like that to
Bro,
bludgeon him.
bro. She went full Joker killing Robin. She beat Eric within an inch of his life
Yes,
with a
it's a
crowbar.
crowbar, thank you.
And again, it's a scene where had this been an action movie, I've seen plenty of action movies where the bad guy will hit the good guy with a crowbar, and you're like, oh, like ow, right? These felt so brutal
Yeah.
because she's hitting him, and she's hitting him to the point where every hit he's losing more and more consciousness, and he puts his hand up and she hits right here and it just splits his hand in half.
Yes.
And I remember just going, just someone end Eric, okay? Just end the guy. He's an idiot, but this is enough.
He's
She
just getting
beat him
punished.
so dude, so bad. But at the end of the day, hey man, who read the book, bro?
Right.
Who you're gonna get it the worst.
It might have been Alvarez's way of making Eric pay the most, you
Yeah,
know?
because I mean,
So,
like, especially in horror movies, how many times have we seen a horror movie? We go, "Oh, you idiot! You know, you moron! Why are you doing this? You know what? I hope you get what's coming to you." Alvarez was like, "Oh, don't worry,
yeah, we'll get him.
don't you worry, we'll get him."
Um, so David, the boyfriend, unfortunately, he has to save Eric, and in order to do so, he uses the shotgun on Natalie, and
Mhm.
he literally blows off her other arm, the one that's
Yep,
attacking Eric.
yep,
And um for a brief moment, she she sw- she switches back to Natalie. The possession ends, and
yeah,
it's her. It's
yeah,
actually her, and it's very heartbreaking. We don't know if it's real or not until she starts speaking, and she says, "Why are you hurting me? You're
yeah.
hurting me." And then she says, "Why does my face hurt?" She doesn't know that there's a bunch of nails inside of her from
Nope.
Eric, grabbing the she was I think what happened was she was turning her sights to David, and he used the nail gun on her to save him, so to speak. But um, you
Yeah,
know,
because she when she comes in, when she walks in, I'm trying to remember, does she already have the nails in the face?
no, that's after the fact. Eric did that
Okay,
to her.
good. All right,
Yeah.
because I was like, "Oh, wait a minute." I was like, did the bad evil spirit kind of make her
Yeah.
like,
I
I
think they
was like,
went
"Oh,
kinda like back and forth
okay,
type deal.
okay,
I
okay,
just saw it this past weekend, and,
okay."
unfortunately, I didn't make the row notes on that scene, but it was both of them, and, and she starts losing blood, and she dies in his arms,
Yeah, it's sad. It's
It's
sad.
a very sad part. And so this is the moment that makes David snap, and, he starts, with the gasoline because he's thinking, "Okay, well, I gotta burn this place down." And then he hears Mia singing a song from their childhood,
Oh, yeah.
and then he's just like, "I can't do this. Let me try to bury
Yeah,
her instead."
yeah.
So he's digging this grave for her, and he heads to the cellar to get her, and she tries to drown him, and then Eric intervenes again, and then
Bro,
this is the top, yeah, and then finally he gets stabbed, but this is the one that kills him.
how this was the only time where I cheered for Eric because he's an idiot the whole movie.
Right.
But I cheered for him because I'm like, that dude is like on 20% life right now. Like his health bar is in the red.
Yeah.
And he still came to save David. And I was like, all right, bro, that you got a real friend card right there. You a real one. I appreciate what you did.
Absolutely. So David has while intervening, David was able to, well, Eric intervened enough where David was able to subdue Mia. He has
Mhm.
her outside. He has like this plastic bag over her face because he has a plan, and he's trying to bury her. And um, the abomination, as Mia is crying, "Please don't do this, David," and David's just like, "Nope." He's like, "You're not her." He's
Nope.
still digging, and then, "Why do you hate me, David?"
Bro, this back and forth is so good
Yeah.
because she starts poking
Right.
at the inner turmoil that he's been dealing with for a while,
Right.
with the mom, with him leaving when their
Yes.
mother got sick and was dying, and then not even that, not even just he she could have left it there, been like, "Oh, you weren't there when mom died," but she goes, "Oh, that's why mom hates you,
Right.
and she's in hell." And she hates you while she's down there,
Right.
and it's just like it's brutal. Like she's
Right.
hitting him hard, and it looks like Mia. Like it doesn't have the monstrous face. Like it's
Correct.
Mia, so like it hurts even more. And I'm like, oh man, David, she's hitting you hard, man.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, we're not gonna say the line, but we got our introduction to the abomination by Mia saying something really nasty to David,
Yup.
her brother. You
Very
know?
incest, very
Right.
incest.
Yeah.
And then it's like
Yeah. We're not gonna
like
repeat the line, but that was our first introduction to the abomination. She says something very sexual to her brother, and then says something about Mia herself as the
yup.
abomination.
And
So
I think that's David's first time really seeing the abomination take Mia.
right.
And the very first thing he sees is Mia looking at him and saying these things
Right.
that are so vulgar and disgusting. And like, that's his sister. And it's like, oh my God. And he's like, Mia? And she's like,
Right.
oh, no, Mia is somewhere else. Yeah, and it's just
Right,
like,
right.
oh, but
Yeah,
it's
very
very bad.
shocking line, very shocking line.
Very shocking lines.
All right. So he manages to bury Mia, and he he somehow finds a way to listen to her heartbeat that
Bro,
it stopped.
I was wondering too. I was like, did he just internally time it? I was like, I wonder if he just
Right.
internally timed it. Like, all right, I'll give her 3 minutes. 3 minutes without oxygen. That's enough. And then I got to MacGyver this thing. I don't know how he learned how to make this MacGyver tool,
Right.
but he figured it out. And I was like, all right.
This was a suspension of disbelief moment for me because I
I was
have
like, I was
no
like,
idea if this man has any medical training, but he makes a
nope.
defibrillator to bring her back.
Yes,
And
that's why I was like, oh, he got real MacGyver all of a sudden. I was like, okay, let's go.
yeah, absolutely. And so he excuse me, he's trying to bring her back. He doesn't bring her back just yet. So
Mhm.
he thinks that she's dead. So it's like, all right, well, she's at peace now. So he goes back in the cabin, and then he hears Mia from behind him.
Yeah,
And then he's just like, oh, it worked, That's where we get
I
the
was
surprise.
I was scared. I was like, did it?
You
I was
thought
like,
that she yeah.
I was
Right.
like, did it work? Because
Right.
this movie's got jokes and tricks, man. I was like, did it work? But it did. It worked.
Exactly. He goes back in to get the keys and for the car, and unfortunately, Eric, already dead, is possessed now and stabs him.
Yep.
And um, David has been lost already, and David has already sacrificed so much. Now he realizes the only way I'm going to save my sister is by not letting her come back into this cabin.
Yep.
So he shoots a gasoline can, which blows both him and Eric up, and
Yep.
the cabin starts, is ablaze now. And so, if you're keeping track, there's only been 5 people in this movie, the main cast, and that's
Mhm.
the 5th death that was
Yeah.
needed. Blood starts raining from the sky,
Oh, this scene is great.
and then we finally see the doppelganger. We see the
Mhm.
abomination physically, corporeal, and it looks
Yes.
it looks like Mia,
Yep.
and but just an evil version of her.
Yep.
And
It's got a weird body anatomy. Like it's
yes,
almost skinnier. You can see the spine. Like it doesn't really have feet. Like it's really weird, but
right,
it's Mia. Like it
right, it has
is
her
Mia.
face, right,
It's Mia. And you're like, oh God.
yeah. Kudos to her that she did a dual role, basically,
Bro, she
So
killed it, man.
yeah.
She killed it.
They have a scuffle. Mia grabs the chainsaw and an homage to the original Evil Dead. She well, not yet, but she cuts the abomination's legs off, but it keeps coming after her. It turns the Jeep over and it lands on Mia's left hand,
Brutal.
and she can't get away. So Mia's just like, so much has happened. I could have died. I'm not letting this thing win. And
Nope.
she starts pulling and she rips her arm out. You talk about tendons before, you see
Yep.
them
Yep.
again, but now you see the actual process of her ripping. She didn't cut it off. She's ripped her arm out.
Ripping it.
Right.
And this was another scene where I had to kind of like look away for a second. Like I would look away, peek back, look away. Because again, they do a really good job of they want you to see the practical work. They
Right.
want you to see it. So like you see the skin stretching and ripping, and like she's just screaming bloody murder. And she, like you said, she's like, I'm not gonna let this happen. She's like, screw this. And whoo, she went 127 hours on us and just ripped that bad boy
Yeah, she
off. And I was
did.
like, okay. I was like, okay, okay.
Yeah, she did. And in an homage to the original Evil Dead, she shoves her now arm without the hand into the chainsaw, and she tells the abomination, eat on this,
Bro.
eat this, and
One of oh my
yeah,
god. One of
the does a Mortal Kombat basically. The abomination eats the chainsaw, and she goes like this, and we see this.
yes, it is honestly,
Split.
and again, I know that I said like the cold open is one of my favorite cold opens. This shot, the way they frame it, the way it's executed, and again, it's a practical dummy. So like you can see that every time she moves the chainsaw, the dummy's moving with it. and the shot of the camera coming down in the frame, and you just see the cabin on fire, and she's just going to town on this thing. It's one of the most metal shots I've ever seen in a horror
Yeah.
movie. It is so good. One of my favorite frames, easily by far, in this movie and horror movies in general. I see the GIF every so often. Someone will just post it on Twitter or something. But like, remember this shot? And I'm like, oh, it's
Yeah.
so good. But yeah,
Yeah.
she goes full on fatality.
Right. And it wasn't just the violence, it was the shot too that made it. It
Yes,
was the rain, it was the cabin on fire, it was her, and then you see it's a wide angle. It's well
it's a
done, absolutely.
great shot.
And so Mia leaves. We see the book. It's still
Yeah,
intact, but it's slammed shut. And then we gotta that's the end of the movie,
yeah, it's
and
over. It's it.
that's it. We don't know what happens to Mia, and then we don't really talk about post credits too much, but we have to this time.
There is one.
Yeah, we see Ash. He's older.
Yes, we do.
He says groovy. He
Groovy.
was in the original Evil Dead trilogy,
Yep.
and that's it. So when I went to see this at the time, I didn't really go to the theater too much for horror at the time.
Mhm.
But the selling point, and I believe you were the person that made the selling point to me, was, "Hey, Anderson, if you get a chance," I think you saw it before I did.
Okay.
If not, you knew about it. You said it.
Quite possible, because I was
Yeah.
like, I was so excited to go see
Yeah,
this
a
movie.
and if you hadn't, you let me know that it's probably worth it because it has practical effects, and I said,
Yes, I
"Oh,"
was so
and
excited about
I
that.
knew what that meant because, of all the stuff in the '80s and '90s that used it so much, and, at the time, it was just kinda like it was I mean, remakes and reboots were already starting to happen, so it was
Yeah.
just like, "Am I really gonna see another one?" It's just like, "You know
Mhm.
what? Why not? Let's take a look," and I wasn't really a big fan of the original trilogy anyway,
Yeah.
so it was just like, "You know what? Why not?" And 90-minute runtime, which for
Bro.
me, when something is action-packed, regardless of the genre, I like 90 minutes. If we're getting straight to the point, I like 90
Mhm.
minutes. Um, Works really well for action, sometimes horror as well, if you're trying to tell an action-packed story. So, those were my initial thoughts, as far as that goes. The practical effects were great. They really made you
Loved it.
cringe with all
They
those
did.
the dismemberments and the deaths and such. So, what were your initial thoughts after seeing the movie? And since horror is one of your
Yeah.
favorite genres,
One of my initial thoughts, I was very happy, was when it was all said and done, it was one of those times where I said, "Okay, this is proof that a remake can be done with the same spirit of the original,
right?
be different, and be really good." And I know that some people might be like, "Well, how is it different?" It's in a cabin. It's got deadites and whatnot. I'm like, yeah, but there were elements in this story that were so engaging. Again, I really appreciated the family dynamic. I appreciated the idea that David, runs away from problems, which is why he's so adamant about actually staying with her this time. You add the turmoil of them losing the mother and him not being there. So I was grateful that they added elements to the story that were really engaging. And I walked away being very, very happy that I was hoping, and I think I was right. I was hoping that people would see it and have the same appreciation for it. And the overall consensus that I got was that people that were fans of the original Evil Dead did walk away from this and were happy. And that made me really happy. Again, the practical effects are one of my favorite things about movies, especially in the horror genre. I think practical effects are so important because sometimes you want to feel it, right? Like you want to feel that depth to camera, depth within the characters. A lot of times when you see a CGI character, even when it's done really well, sometimes you can kind of you say, well, that's not real. You know what I mean? Like we try to turn our brains off every once in a while, but sometimes a certain effect can pull you out. Everything about this movie felt authentic, and I'm so happy about that. It was violent. It was
Right.
not like you said, it's like a 90-minute runtime. And I feel like the moment from the cold open to the ending, you don't get a chance to breathe. You know what I
No,
mean? Like there's always something happening. And I appreciated that about the movie because again, it allows to have a nice short run time. You're in and out. There's no lollygagging, and there's characters here that you can get behind and you're rooting for. So initially, I was very happy. Like I said, I went and saw it a second time.
so obviously everyone's mad at Eric. What is Eric
Yeah,
thinking? But he ends up getting it the worst.
he does,
Basically,
dude.
he gets stabbed numerous times. But first he gets stabbed by the mirror, then he gets stabbed numerous times with the hypodermic needle, then he
Mhm.
gets hit with the nail gun, then he gets hit with the crowbar, then he gets stabbed again.
Yeah.
That's
He's
the
been
one that
through it.
kills him. And then even after he dies, he gets blown up
Yeah.
by the
And he comes
gasoline.
back he comes back as a deadite anyway, and it's
Right.
like, bro, like, he was so badly beaten, I was like, "Man, the deadite probably don't even want that, man, that's like driving a really old
Right.
Pinto, like, you don't want that anymore," like, and he was like, "No," so, like, he couldn't escape his fate, like, the moment he opened that book, he sealed his fate in every way, shape, or form, and, man, he got it
Right.
bad.
So people call this a remake a lot, and Alvarez has been very clear to say this is not a remake. He always says
It's a
reimagining.
reimagining.
He doesn't say reboot either. But since you're a fan of this franchise, I think I could safely say that.
Yeah.
Um, do you think this might end up being like a sequel? They might end up saying this is a sequel to the original trilogy. Will we see Mia again one day? What do you think they might do with this, or just let it be its own thing?
I think that following the latest movie that's coming out, I think following that, they might do somewhat of a retcon and say it's actually a sequel. Again,
Okay.
when they first made it, I don't think it was intended as a sequel. As Alvarez had mentioned, it's a
Right.
reimagining of a great story. He's in his mind, he's like, I'm not going to try to remake it. I'm going to do a reimagining. But based on what we might be learning about this new movie that has been stated to be in the same universe, and it's like,
Right.
okay, is there more than one book? Can it be multiple locations? Like, this is very interesting. So I think in that case, they can absolutely say, hey, guess what? That 2013 Evil Dead movie you saw was actually a sequel. So it's in the same universe as our
Right.
Ash from the previous films, which would be really cool because I want to see Mia again. I absolutely want to see her again. I thought that she was great. I thought Jane Levy gave an amazing performance. And I just thought that by the end of the movie, everything that she had been through, I'm like, she's a complete BA. You know what I mean? Like, she had to go fight demons figuratively and then fought literal demons, and by the end of the movie. And I was kind of hoping that after the 2013 version, that in a few years we would actually see a follow-up with Mia. I was actually
Right.
hoping for that. I know people online speculated they're gonna do another one. It's gonna have Ash and Mia. And I was
Right.
like, okay, let's see how that goes. But I think what ended up happening was the TV show got greenlit and they were like,
Right.
oh, we're gonna put all our resources in the show. We got Ash back. Let's just go for it. And I love the show. I'm not mad about it, but I hope we see Mia again,
Right.
man. I really do.
Right. And I mean, I'm not really familiar with the actors from this. We have Shiloh Fernandez as David. We have Lou Taylor, Pucci as Eric, Jessica Lucas as Olivia, Elizabeth Blackmore as Natalie, and of course, you stated Jane Levy as Mia. My what if casting here is that Lily Collins was supposed to play the part of Mia, and
That was
yeah,
true, right?
yeah,
Yeah, I remember that.
absolutely.
I
So
remember that. I
for those of
remember.
you that may or may not be familiar with Lily Collins, she was in Mirror Mirror, the Snow White remake. There, she was in Mortal Instruments.
Mhm,
She got a lot of chances over the years. Um, she was in let's see here, Tolkien. She was in
mhm.
Mank. And most of you might know her as Emily from Emily in Paris. So um if you can imagine her as Mia, it's like wow,
Wow.
So she was on a project where it was a really serious one where she plays somebody with an eating disorder, and
Mhm.
it looks like she actually lost weight for the role, so that's really
Okay.
cool. So but to for all the roles that I named, nothing would be compared to what she would have to do to play Mia. And
Yeah.
so that's a credit to Jane Levy for what she was able to do. And she got a couple more parts, doing horror movies and
Yeah.
such.
Yeah.
That was it. Don't Breathe.
Don't
So,
breathe. Yep.
and I think Alvarez did that too.
Yeah,
So
like, he brought her back, which was great, and one thing I appreciate too, and, especially, it happens more often in horror films, which is cool, but I'm glad that I wasn't too familiar with this cast because it helps
right,
me to get into them as the characters, and I'll be 100% with you. I thought David was going to survive.
Oh,
I thought him and Mia were going to be our survivors. I really thought that was going to be the case because ironically, based on the trailers and he's got the blue button up shirt, I'm like, oh, he's our new Ash. I'm like,
right.
David's going to be our new Ash. Like he's going to be the guy that's the reluctant hero who just happens to have to do this, because our original Ash wasn't necessarily like the lead hero. I'm the good guy. Like it's a reluctant hero. Like he has to do these things. So I felt that was going to be David. And what helped is that so when he died, it came as a real shock to me, but they could pull that trigger because again, it's not like casting a really big name where you're like, okay, he's definitely gonna live. I thought David was gonna make it and he didn't. So it's really cool when they cast actors that aren't necessarily household name for these roles because you're not sure if they're gonna make it or not. And it ended up being that Mia was almost technically our new Ash, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's it.
Right.
Like I said, we're not. I made it a point not to take down any lines because most of them are just too disturbing for us to repeat, or might be too vulgar. We don't want to get flagged. But what a triumph for practical effects, for horror, for we know it's not a remake, but for remakes, it's like, hey, we can get something if it's something special,
Yeah.
and like you said to your point, a retcon would be really cool. Like, what if Evil Dead Rise is just really good at the box office? You could expand and find a way to, to say, well, this is a part of the story too. Hey, maybe that it's referenced in Rise,
I
and
would
we don't.
I hope, man. I really do.
Maybe it's referenced.
I would love it, because again, like um when it came to the show kind of showed you how big the universe could be. You know what I mean? Like the Evil Dead series is almost like a giant road trip where they're going from state to state, different. And you're like, this thing is humongous, and there's deadites everywhere. So, like, if they wanted to, they could absolutely do that. They could say, hey, let's make this an actual sequel. We'll put these in the same world, and we'll allow these characters to return if we want them to return and whatnot. And that would be really, really cool. Like you said, I'm really hopeful for the brand Evil Dead. I'm sad it took so long to get another movie. But again, I'm grateful for it. I felt like the show was great. The show, and Bruce Campbell has mentioned it. The show had a hard time because it was on Stars, and not a lot of people had Stars, let
Mm,
alone knew what Stars was. And by the time it made it to Netflix, and that's when the numbers started hitting because majority everybody has Netflix. But by that point, they were already kind of like, all right, we're not going to come back. And I think that he said, I'm pretty sure he said in an interview that I watched that it was the most pirated show at the time because everybody wanted to watch it, but nobody had Stars. And I feel like they kind of got shot in the foot a little bit. So I was kind of sad for the franchise at that point, even though we got a great 3 seasons. But I've been excited to get back into the movie theater world and see a theatrical release. And one thing I love about it too is that the Evil Dead Rises, it's in that same one location setting, and
right.
I think that's what makes the Evil Dead movies work so well. Some people love Evil Dead Army of Darkness, which is out and medieval times, and that's great. But I personally love Evil Dead 1 and Evil Dead 2 for the single location in the cabin. And I appreciate that 2013 did the same thing. You got that claustrophobic feel. You cannot escape. It's in this cabin. And I like that they're continuing that trend. And I would love to see more. Like, if we want to continue and say that there's more of these books in the world, there's other ways for these deadites to exist. I would love to see more films and new characters and new dire situations. Make it an office building. Why? Like
Right.
let's have a good time with it. But I'm very happy to hear that, based on what people have said, that it seems like it's hitting the mark. And I'm very, very excited for the brand as a whole.
Right. And let's take a peek here. So it looks like Evil Dead 2013 was made for 17 million.
Mhm.
And by the way, that's low budget in terms of Hollywood movies,
Very, very.
It made 97.5 million.
That's
So
very good.
it was a success, So they
Yep.
went super low budget. I mean, not bad considering how well those practical effects were, but
Dude.
I feel like most of the money went into CGI,
Yeah.
and
Like,
the action scenes and stuff and such.
yeah, there's great stunt sequences in there. You know what I mean? Like, again, the cabin explosions and things like that, and the violence and the fighting and the practical effects. And it shows, and again, we've talked about this with horror movies, especially. It's like if you have a concrete idea and you've got a good way to execute it, you don't need a crazy big budget. And I know $17 million is a lot of money, but in the world of movie making, that's not a lot. And again, it just showed the love and care and appreciation that went into making this movie, and it showed. And they had some great visual effects artists. We've seen the visual effects that people can do today with practical makeup, with limbs, with everything, you know what I mean? So this movie felt like a highlight reel for practical effects, where you could watch this and go, wow, these people did a really good job. I hope to see more of this. You know, there's some movies that come out where you wish that there was more practical effects, you know what I mean? But this movie took to the core, hey, you're gonna get them. We'll use CGI when we absolutely have to. If not, we're going full practical effects, and it's great. And it looks like they're continuing that trend with the latest movie.
Absolutely. And like I said, if not for Evil Dead Rise coming out, I probably wouldn't have come around to this anytime
I was so
soon.
excited when you said it. You're like, we're doing
Yeah.
Evil Dead. I was like, oh yeah,
Yeah, I do. I was like, this is a Ricardo horror movie,
I
and
couldn't wait.
for me, from a film aspect, it's the practical effects that got me. It was like,
Mhm,
okay, we did this, and then the 90-minute runtime. If Alvarez was very deliberate in the imagery that he used, that it wasn't
mhm.
just a typical horror movie. It was, I want to just keep hitting you with
Yeah,
disturbing imagery, not just gore. I want to keep hitting
yeah.
you with disturbing imagery, with disturbing language, with disturbing visuals, on top of everything. And he made the most of this 90-minute runtime.
He did, and
So
I also appreciated how how serious the movie is, because
right.
one of the things that people love about the older Evil Dead movies of Bruce Campbell is they can be very slapsticky at
Right.
time, very silly, very comical. But again, I've always one of my biggest things about remakes, or in this case a reimagining, is I feel like you have to take some different you have to do something a little differently. And there are probably some people that didn't like the seriousness in this much. They want to see more of the slapstick and whatnot. But hey, you got a 3-season show that's got all that. It's great. But for this movie, I love that, like you said, Alvarez just kept hitting us and hitting us and hitting us, and he didn't hold back. It was aggressive, it was violent, and it was serious. And I cared. Like, I cared for these characters. Again, I really love the fact that he tied an emotional story to this. It just wasn't. He could have very easily been like, "Hey, it's a bunch of young kids going out to party. They're gonna go to a cabin for a few
Right.
days." And he was like, "No, like, we're gonna make this emotional, so you care for these characters. You want to see them make it out." A movie like this, people will have fun just watching the kills on screen, right? They're like,
Right.
"Oh, you think the kills are gonna be great?" But this one was like, "Oh my god, I don't want this person to go through this. Oh my god, these people are actually trying to help her get over her addiction. She's a nurse. This guy's an idiot, but he doesn't mean any harm. He's trying to help. You know what I mean?" And then David coming and being the big brother and stuff. So I appreciated that Alvarez incorporated an emotional story, a family dynamic, and then also just went super hard. He just said,
Yeah.
"We're going super hard on this."
Yeah, absolutely. And to just also to the point of just we keep talking about Jane Levy and her performance, and
Yeah,
so a lot of times we talked about this horror. Sometimes these people just go above and beyond
yeah,
for these performances, and this was definitely an underrated performance
yep,
as far as that goes. A lot of people I talk to, though, I rarely hear anything negative about this movie, even though it was a remake.
yeah,
And
yeah.
the Raimi trilogy is very, very big among the horror community. But whenever I always preface it, I say, hey, listen, I know it was, and we know it's not a true remake, it's a reimagining, so to speak. But
Mhm.
it's like, listen, I know it's not the original, but I kind of like Evil Dead 2013, and I just see, I see the other person's face light up. It's like, oh, that was a good one.
It
So
it works because I think that you can. This is one of those times, like I said, you can put one in each hand and say, I like this for this, and I like this for that. And
right,
I love that about it. They're similar, but they're just different enough. So like you, I've never talked to a person that I know that has disliked it.
right,
I have one buddy who said he had to walk out of the theater a few times because it was actually making him sick.
right.
So it doesn't sound so much like he was disliking. He was like, "Oh man, it was just so brutal. I had to walk out a few times." So that's understandable,
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll see what happens. We both plan on seeing Evil Dead Rise. We don't
bro.
know if we'll give you a breakdown or not, but we're just letting you know ahead of time. We both plan on seeing it as soon as possible. Um,
Yep.
and that's what prompted this. So,
Yeah.
alrighty, folks. that was our breakdown on Evil Dead 2013, as it's known on the
So good.
online film community. Yes,
So
absolutely.
good.
We always see people sharing shots from the film or gifts from
Yeah.
the film and such. So
I kid you
absolutely,
not. I kid you not. Yesterday on Twitter, somebody just shared the final frame of the chainsaw kill.
yeah.
Like it was just there on Twitter. I was like, man, I'm telling you, man.
Yeah. So it's gonna is after Evil Dead Rise comes out, it's gonna start getting more love again.
Mhm.
It's just sometimes when time passes, people start looking back at something and they want to bring it
Yeah.
up again. It's been 10 years and you know, it's good stuff. So but we wanted to thank you so much for listening and tuning in. We wanted to remind you if you could please give us a like, a share, and subscribe on YouTube. We are at the Panel Bros. We are thankful for those of you that are already subscribing and those of you that are watching. But if you do watch or listen to us and you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. It'll really help us out and as far as our reach goes. So thank you for that. For Ricardo Segura, this is Anderson Marchak saying thank you for coming to the panel.